Hello, everyone. Happy Tuesday. It's time for another episode of Tuesday Live at 5. This is Lena Gersa. I'm an independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator from Cambridge, Ontario, Canada, where it is a beautiful fall day. I just have to say, we had horrible rain and wind yesterday, and today the sun came out. It's just glorious. But today, I am all about the holidays. I am featuring the absolutely fantastic Elegant Pine Snowflakes suite, which is a Stampin' Up! Online exclusive suite collection. Now, again, this is one that you may have missed amid all the hoopla of the September-December mini when it launched last month. Actually 2 months ago now in September. But this is one of those suites that I absolutely, it was on one of the first ones that was on my list during pre-order because it's just gorgeous. And I love that it's a little bit different. There's lots and lots of snowflakes out there. You probably have lots and lots of snowflake stamps and dies in your stash. But this one is a little bit different because the snowflakes are made with various evergreen branches. It's really, really unique and good for all kinds of winter occasions, not just Christmas. So I'm going to show you the suite. We're going to make 3 projects today, and then I'll show you a whole bunch more, as I always do. But while I am showing you the suite, please let me know you're here. Give me a hello. Let me know where you're watching from, whether you're watching live with me or you are catching the replay later on. I always like to know who's watching and from where. So let me just quick flip to the my desk here, and I will show you the products. So here we go. This is the Elegant Pine Snowflake Suite, and I actually was calling it the Delicate Pine Snowflake Suite erroneously for a long time because it features the Delicate Pines stamp set and dies. Now, I have to say, last weekend I did my in-person 3-day retreat event, and as always, I bring all of my current products, my current tools for guests at my retreat to use, and this was by far the most in-demand bundle all weekend long. It was constantly, where's Delicate Pines? Who's got Delicate Pines? Everybody wanted to use this one, and with good reason. I mean, look at these beautiful images. We have large and a medium snowflake, and then an itty bitty one. We've got some pine sprigs and branches. We've got some different sort of also pine sprig snowflakes. We've got some sentiments, and then these dies. Like, look at how many dies are in this set. It is just fantastic. Lots of open dies that cut the stamped images, but then we have 2 pine cone dies that layer. We have a branch. We've got lots of berries. And then these really unique little pine branch dies, which are just fantastic. So you're gonna see them all in action this afternoon as I demonstrate the projects. But honestly, this is just a fantastic bundle. Cannot get enough of it. And then, of course, we have coordinating products. I'll set the embellishments aside for a moment. We have this beautiful designer series paper. I think I've gone through 4 packs of it already. Look at how stunning this paper is. Look at those snowflakes made from various evergreen branches. And you know what's even cooler is many of the images in the DSP can be cut with the dies. So let me just bring the dies over here for a moment and show you how many of these images in this DSP you can cut out using these beautiful dies. Where is this one? That one cuts that. We have itty bitty ones that'll cut these little guys. Where's this little guy? So there are so many dies in this set, and many of them cut out images from the DSP. So that's just one pattern. We have others. These, again, also can be cut with the dies. This one is just sort of a botanical, moody, sort of soft sea background. Love the rich colors in that one. This one you're going to see in action. This one also works with the dies. Here you go. You get your small one here. That one will cut that one out. And then we have the large one that'll cut that one out. So many possibilities with this. We have another botanical with a lighter background. We have this large, this was like begging for a nice big, 5x7 photo on a scrapbook page. Like, how beautiful is that? And then of course we flip over and we get different patterns. So we have these sort of frosted patterns. This is a salt on watercolor technique. If you've ever done that, I used to do it with my kids. It's you watercolor and then you sprinkle salt, and the salt absorbs the color, and you get this sort of mottled effect. And it looks like frost, like a frosted window pane. So we have it in several colors. That one's shaded spruce. We've got Pretty Peacock. and we've got Old Olive. So frosty patterns. And then we have additional sort of more subdued snowflake patterns. This one I really love, the Lost Lagoon. Here again, we have more snowflakes that we can cut with the dies. There you go. Those ones work with the dies. And as do these smaller ones, you can cut them as well. And then we have this sort of pretty peacock pattern. So many possibilities with this suite. What I especially love is that this side is not really Christmassy because it doesn't have your red and green. All right, let me see who's joining us and give a hello. Let's see who we've got. Hi, Charlie. Welcome. Hi, Lauren. Welcome, welcome. Hi, Laura. Hi, Terry. Thank you so much for your congratulations. I very much appreciate that. Hi, Louise and Carla and Judy. Hi, Anna from Nova Scotia. Hi, Julie and Joyce. Welcome, welcome. Hi, Mary. Welcome. Hi, Deborah. Hi, Jean. Yes, it's a lovely evening here as well. Yes, I'm no longer blurry and I no longer have an echo. So life is good. We've got a new router and it is so much better. I am so thankful that it is finally working. Oh, you've got the DSP, Louise. Okay, well, you might need the dies to cut out all those beautiful snowflakes from the DSP. Just saying. All right, let's get to some Stampin'. So our first project is this one. This was actually one of the projects I had on offer for during my card buffet last week. It's actually really quick and easy to put together, but it's got a real wow factor just because of some ink blending. So let me show you how we're going to create that background to start. So I have a 4 by 5¼ inch piece of pretty peacock cardstock. And we're going to start by just stamping around the outer edge with this sort of pine branch stamp from the stamp set. And we're going to do tone on tone stamping. So I'm going to stamp in pretty peacock ink. And we're just going to kind of work our way around the outside. I'm going to make a point of turning the stamp so that it doesn't look all the same. I don't want it to look like a really repetitive thing. Sometimes I like to angle the stamp so I get a different part of the image. Sometimes I like to just use a little bit of the image. It gives you a really neat, see, those two look too matchy-matchy. So we're going to immediately change it so it doesn't look the same because we want it to look like, you know, you're looking through an opening of branches. All right, so that is the first step. Then I'm going to come in with my blending brush and pretty peacock ink again. And we're just going to blend that out. We want this to be a little bit moody and we don't want those branches to be really all that stark. They're just kind of fading in from the background. So I'm coming in with my pretty peacock ink and I'm just blending out all the way around that area that I stamped. All the way around. There we go. I'm leaving the center lighter. Okay, you can see it's a little bit lighter in the middle. And that's all there is to it. Okay, so once I've done that, then I am going to run it through my Stampin' Cut and Emboss with the large snowflake. So that's going to go in centered side to side, a little bit towards the top. And I'm going to run it through and cut a window. And then I'm going to emboss using the Forever Plaid embossing folder. And when I do, voila, through the magic of television, we end up with something that looks like this. Okay, so we have our ink blended background with our stamped pine branches and then our little window that we've die cut. Okay, super simple. And then what we're going to do is take a chunk of the DSP. So this is, let me just show you which pattern this is from. This is this pattern here. And all I did is just sort of rough cut around to get one of these large snowflakes. And you're going to see when I layer this over top, I'm going to have that large snowflake peeking through my die cut window. Okay, so what I'm going to do is go ahead and add some mini dimensionals all the way around this opening. So I'm kind of putting the dimensionals on the little prongs that are left when you die cut the snowflake. Okay, all the way around. Now, if you paid attention when I was showing you, you see how these little bits are going to stick out. We're going to cut those off. It's not going to be a problem. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and remove my backings. Oh, not the whole dimensional, just the backing. There we go. Excuse me. And then we're going to go ahead and center that snowflake in our window. And this is something that I have to do while standing. So I'm just going to stand up for a second so that I can make sure I'm looking down over top of my phone. There we go. Okay, so now we have our little snowflake, or large snowflake, I should say, peeking through the window. I'm going to take my snips. I'm going to trim off these excess bits that are peeking out. We don't need those. Okay, now I'm sure someone's thinking, why would she bother cutting a window? She could just die cut the snowflake and stick it on. You certainly could. I just wanted to show a different perspective. I like the little peek through effect. You certainly could also turn this into a shaker card if you wanted to, right? You could throw a little bit of acetate on there and throw some sequins in there, and you would get a really pretty shaker card. All right, let's go ahead and work on our sentiment. So I have my little 1/2-inch strip of white cardstock, 1/2 by 4, and I am going to stamp my Celebrate the Season sentiment in Cherry Cobbler ink. So I'm just going to go ahead and ink it up in Cherry Cobbler and go ahead and stamp. And I have to move this closer to me again. I apologize if that's out of range of the camera, just to make sure I'm stamping straight. All right, now I'm going to come in with my old banner punch to punch the ends of this. There is actually a brand new banner punch in the new online exclusives that just dropped today that will do this for you, which is awesome. I have ordered it. Can't wait to get it. Then I don't have to use a retired punch all the time in my videos. But that's all there is to that. Then we're going to go ahead and add our greenery. So let me talk about this die for a minute. So people have asked me, what is with this weird looking pine branch die? Well, the idea is you can actually cut 3 of these and have them peeking out. They'll form a snowflake. If you glue them at the center, you can actually get 6 arms of a snowflake. Okay, that's why they're designed the way they are. We're not going to use them like that. We're just going to use them as some greenery peeking out from either side of our banner here. So all I'm going to do, I know there's lots of little bits in there. I don't need to worry about that because we're not going to see them. So I'm just going to take and add some seal to either end of my banner. And I'm going to adhere one of those little pine branches on each end. Okay, so now I have my little pine sprigs peeking out. Okay, and then I have just 1 gold branch. And again, we're going to make double duty of it. So I'm going to trim this. I'm going to add some more seal to both ends. And we're going to tuck 1 kind of in behind on that side. And then this little guy, we're going to hide the little stem that I cut off, and we're just going to have that peeking out on the other. Okay. Then we're going to add our ribbon. Now, I have to do a little disclaimer about this ribbon. This is ribbon from last year's mini. I fell in love with it. I bought like a zillion rolls of it, and I have so much, and I love it. So I'm using it. I don't normally use retired ribbon in my videos. If you've been watching for any length of time, you likely know that I only use current products. But this was just one. It was the perfect ribbon for this card, and I could not use it. So here we go. So I've just gone ahead and put a little bit of seal across the back of that banner again. And then I'm just going to take and lay the banner across the ribbon with just a little bit of it peeking out the bottom. Okay, because I want to see that ribbon. I don't want to put the ribbon all the way behind the banner. That then is going to go onto the front of my panel here, just with some dimensionals. So I'm going to go ahead and add dimensionals sort of across the middle of my little popped up snowflake here. I'm going to get rid of my backings, lay this onto the front of my card. Let's make sure that's straight. Increases the likelihood of getting our banner straight, just like that. Okay, and then those raw ends of the ribbon, I'm just going to wrap around the back side of my card and secure them. And that gives me a nice clean edge. If I cut the ribbon off, you run the risk of the ends fraying and it not being so pretty. Okay, all right. Oh, I'm glad, Terry. Thank you for giving me permission to use something from my stash. All right, I have a card base here. This is 4 1/4 by 11. I'm just going to double check because it seems a little wide. No, it is 4 1/4 by 11 cherry cobbler cardstock, scored at 5 1/2. So we'll go ahead and fold that in half along our score line. And then when we adhere this, we're going to put liquid glue on this part that is popped and then a couple of dimensionals on the area that is not, so that it all lies flat on the front of our card. So I'm going to put a couple dimensionals here, a couple here, and probably one more there. Okay. I'm going to get rid of all my backings. And then I'm going to add a little liquid glue to that part, the DSP that we popped. And then that whole thing is going to get adhered to my card base. And again, I have to stand up for this. Anytime I pop stuff up, I feel like I have to stand to make sure it is straight. There we go. Okay, now a couple of additional little touches I added here. I did a little bit of flicky flicky with my Winky Winky. So Wink of Stella is this magical glitter brush. You've probably seen me use it before. And what I like to do, just to add sort of, that did not want to come out of there. What I like to do, just to add a little bit of shimmer, is just take and flick the edge of my brush against the lid, and I get this sort of overall shimmer. You're not going to be able to see it on the camera. It just does not pick up very well on the camera, but you're going to have to take my word for it. It's got some lovely shimmer. Okay. The last touch are some berries in our little arrangement. So let me pull those out. So these little berries, I actually die cut from cherry cobbler cardstock and added some adhesive sheets too, which makes them really easy to kind of just tuck in under my banner here. So I'm going to tuck one in on each end. Don't need to mess with liquid glue. Adhesive sheets are my fave. If you haven't noticed, I use them a lot. Okay, and then the last touch, I had a whole pack of these pretty embellishments. I didn't show you. I forgot to show you the embellishments from this suite. Look at these. Look how gorgeous these are. These elegant, or these faceted snowflakes, they're called. They're absolutely stunning. And then we have this gorgeous ribbon. You're going to see me use the ribbon on our last card. And you're going to see me use these on the last two. But this one, I actually used some different embellishments. These are the, what do we call them? Iridescent foil gems. That's what they're called. And they're just clear gems with a little hint of gold foil embedded in them. And I just liked that little hint of gold that picks up the gold in the ribbon and the little bit of shimmer that I had going on my card front. And it just makes everything so pretty and shimmery. So there we go. There is our finished card. You like that one? I'll just quick show you on my sample here. What I did is just added a basic white panel and did a little bit of stamping. I added a sentiment from the Wishing You Joy stamp set, but super, super quick and easy to make a pretty, a little bit of a wow holiday card. All right, so that is number one done. I'm going to move some things out of the way here and we will get on to number two. I do need to keep, which one do I need? I need the cherry cobbler for later. All right, so number two is one I posted earlier today. Yeah, everybody's saying I'm freezing on Facebook. I have no idea why it's freezing on Facebook. Facebook is not playing well with streaming services lately. I don't know what's going on with that. But anyway, we're over here on YouTube, so I'm glad you found me over here. All right, so our next card is this one. So this is very much a wintry card. So this would be ideal to send to someone who maybe doesn't celebrate Christmas, but you want to, send holiday greetings to. So it's very non-traditional, but it's just really pretty and wintry. So I'm going to show you how to do this one. Again, way easier than it looks. This was actually a project from my October card buffet. October? No, September. October I just did. All right, we're going to start this time with a piece of Lights of Aurora DSP. I featured this a while back. On the back sides of all of this paper, we have these beautiful sort of monochromatic washes. So this one has the shades of purple. And we're going to do, again, a little bit of stamping. I have to make sure I'm using the right little basket of tools here. So we're going to stamp. We're going to start with that same pine branch image. And we're going to be using, are we going to use that? Yes, we are. Actually, we're not going to start with that. We're going to start with the Night of Navy ink and this large snowflake stamp. So let me pull out my ink pad here. I'll set this stamp aside. We're going to need it in a minute. And what I'm going to do is just ink up part of this image. And I just really want to get kind of one branch of the snowflake because I really want it to just look like a pine branch. I don't want it to read as a snowflake. So I'm just kind of coming around. It's not going to be super perfect, but I do not want this to look snowflakey. I just want to get the pine branches going. And we'll add one more there. Okay, so that's our first step. Next, I'm going to come in with my pine branch image and some Blackberry Bliss ink. I'll stamp off the pretty peacock that I was using. And I'm just going to come in and stamp again around the edges using Blackberry Bliss. It's okay to stamp over top of those previous images. It's a totally different looking image and it's a different color. So we're still going to be able to kind of detect both images, even though it may look a little bit messy because we're stamping over top. Okay. All right, now we get to work some magic. So I'm going to come in now with, again, Blackberry Bliss ink and my blending brush. And we're going to do similar to what we did on the last card. I'm going to darken this all down with Blackberry Bliss ink. I'm not going to darken the center. I want the center to be a little bit lighter. I'm going to have it keep that original sort of purple shade that the DSP was. And I'm going to come around and just blend that all out with the Blackberry Bliss. Okay, just kind of darkening it all down. And then, to make it really moody, we're going to come back with the Night of Navy. So here is my Night of Navy blending brush. And we're going to come in with the Night of Navy. And again, just darken the edges. I don't want to cover that Blackberry Bliss that we just put down, but I want to darken down those edges. So it almost looks like it's nighttime, like the branches, we're looking through, you know, the branches on a wintry night. So I find Night of Navy, you could also use Secret Sea for this. They both blend with the Blackberry Bliss really, really nicely. And there we go. Isn't that pretty? Look how gorgeous that is. So easy to get that look. All right, let's keep the Night of Navy handy because we're going to need it in a few minutes. I have very inky fingers at this point, so it will be miraculous if I don't leave an inky fingerprint somewhere. All right, so I have here a 4 by 5¼ inch piece of basic white cardstock that I've embossed using the Peaceful Greenery embossing folder. And we're going to use that as our background. Now, I didn't want to cover it completely, but I also wanted a little pop of silver. Now, this is textured silver cardstock. This is now sold out. The silver foil is also sold out. So I ran out of silver foil and I had to use this. Okay. I normally would have used the silver foil. Any silver will do. So this piece, I should mention, is cut to 3 by 4¼ inches. This one is 3¼ by 4½ inches. So it's a little bit larger border than I typically use, but I wanted to see that silver peeking out. Okay. So I'm going to add a little bit of seal to the back of my stamped panel here. And we're going to just go ahead and center that on our silver foil piece, just like that. And then that is going to get stuck to the center of our white embossed panel. And it covers a lot of the embossed pattern, but there's just enough showing to add some nice subtle texture. That's not quite centered. Let's slide that over just a smidge. There we go. Give it a burnish. Now that we can go ahead and glue onto our card base. Our card base is Night of Navy. It's 5½ by 8½, scored at 4¼ inches. So we'll go ahead and fold that in half along our score line. I'm going to add a little bit of liquid glue to the back of my embossed panel. I like to use liquid glue with embossing because it gets into the nooks and crannies a little bit better. And I feel like it gives me better adhesion. So we're just going to go ahead and adhere that panel to our card base. And again, I'm flipping over to burnish because I mentioned I have inky fingers. Do you see that? And I don't want to get that ink on the front of my card. So if you are someone who gets inky fingers, I think anybody who stamps probably does, flipping your card base over to burnish avoids getting an oops where you don't want it. Okay, a fingerprint on the back of the card, I'm not that worried about. I can call it that my seal, proof that I made it, but I don't want to mess up the front of my card with my inky fingers. All right, so now I have here one of the large snowflakes. I've stamped it in Night of Navy ink, and then I've die cut it. Now the dies are kind of cool. Let me just bring back the dies for a minute. So the dies, you can cut out a solid snowflake like I did on the last card, or you can cut out the center to get a more detailed snowflake. So essentially all this is I basically stamped my image and then ran both through. So I lined up my die, my outer die and the inner die, and ran it all through at once. And you get this beautiful detailed snowflake. Love that you can do that. All right, so this one is going to get glued on the front of my card. I'm just going to go ahead and stick it down. I'm not going to do anything fancy. We're not going to pop this part up. So I'm just going to put a little bit of glue on each of the arms of my snowflake and maybe just a little smidge in the middle. And we're just going to adhere that centered on our card front there. Okay. All right, now we're going to do a little bit of arranging again. We're going to start with our sentiment label. So this is cut using the textured notes dies. It's the smallest little rectangle label from those dies. And we are going to stamp Warmest Winter Wishes in Night of Navy. So I'm just going to pick up a little bit of ink here and stamp that. This sentiment fits perfectly on this little label. And then because I wanted it to stand out a little bit from the white snowflake, I'm going to take my Blackberry Bliss blending brush. I'm not picking up any additional ink. So this is just whatever is still on the brush. And I'm just going to kind of come around the edges of my label just to give it a little blush of color. I don't want it to be completely purple, but I also wanted it to stand out a little bit from my large snowflake. Okay, so you get just that little hint of purple. All right, now we're going to do our arranging, very similar to the last card. So I have one of those funky looking pine sprigs that I've cut from some of the Peaceful Garden glimmer paper. And then I have the leaves, same leaves that we used on the last card, out of the silver. You saw where I cut it actually from my matte piece. So I'm going to go ahead, just like we did on the last card, trim my snowflake, or pine branch, and I'm going to go ahead and adhere them. Again, I'm not going to worry about poking out all those little bits on those little pine sprigs because I'm not going to see them. So just a little bit of seal. And oh, I should mention, you can see these little bits of white here. Hot tip for cutting glimmer paper with these dies. Use some parchment paper. I put parchment paper over the glimmer paper and they came out so beautifully. It was really, really easy. Okay, so that's my hot tip. Parchment paper over the glimmer paper gives you a nice clean cut and makes it easy to get them out of the dies. So there we go. We've got our two pine sprigs. And then again, excuse me, just need a little sip of water. I'm going to take and cut my branch in half. And just like we did on the last card, we're going to add a little bit of seal, and we'll go one. And this one, I'm actually going to cut that little bit of stem off because we're going to see it and I don't want to see it. So I'm just going to trim that off of there to clean it up. And then we're going to just adhere that behind our label like that. Okay, now I have a little bit of this Petunia Pop iridescent ribbon. You wouldn't think, this is actually from the Halloween suite that launched in July, and you wouldn't think that this, like, I was really trying to figure out what ribbon to use, and I looked up and I saw this stuff and I'm like, huh, wonder if that'll work. And lo and behold, it was the perfect choice. This is why I keep my ribbon on display where I can see it. Because I would never have thought to use this ribbon with this suite at all. So I put a little bit of seal across the back of my label, and then I'm just going to kind of zigzag the ribbon across the back of the label here. Actually, I think I'm just going to do An N. No, we'll do 2. What did I do? 1, 2. We'll do 1 more. Do I like that? Nope, I don't. We're just going to do it like this. I'll move this over a bit. I don't want it to be too much ribbon. Actually cut way more than I needed. I just wanted a little hint of that pink. So I'm going to take and trim the tail off at an angle. You want to kind of do the same angle on both ends. Okay, and then that is going to go onto my card front with a couple of dimensionals. Oh, Elfie, you will love this bundle. It is so much fun to play with. I actually have to stop myself from picking it up because when I sit down, the first thing I want to grab is this one. It's just such a fun, beautiful bundle. And then our last touch are some of these fabulous faceted snowflakes. So we're going to add, there's some of the silver ones. Oh, that one just came off on my finger. That's how inky my fingers are. The snowflakes are sticking to my fingers. And I got 2 more in my little baggie here. Come here, you guys. Now, these are fairly raised. So if you are concerned about postage, you may not want to use these, or you put a, a scrap piece of cardstock over top before you put it in the envelope so that they don't catch on the sorting machine. Okay, and that is that. Isn't that pretty? So simple and really, really pretty. All right, so that's number 2. Where did I put number 1? I think I lost. Oh, there it is. Okay, let's set those together so I can find them again at the end. All right, moving on. Look how messy my grid paper is. Good gracious. All right, we're going to move on to number 3. Number 3 is a fun fold. You know me and fun folds. I love me a good fun fold. This is one I haven't done in a while. It's just pretty straightforward looking on the front. And then we open it up and we get that wow factor. We call this a W fold. What I love about this fold is that if you wanted to, if you are someone who likes to send family photos with your Christmas cards, you could replace the DSP with photos of your kids or your fur babies or whomever. So I think this is a really fun fold, pardon the pun, fun fold to do for the holidays. And I also love fun fold cards that can stand on display on a mantle or a tabletop during the holidays. So let me show you how I put this one together. We are going to start with a 4 1/4 by 11 inch piece of shaded spruce cardstock. It's scored at 5.5 inches, so just a plain old regular card base. So we'll fold that in half, and we're going to add some DSP. So on the front, I'll just show you first. We have 3 the same size. Okay, so this is the foliage image. It's 4 by 5 1/4. That's going to be for the front. And then we have 2 of this shaded spruce kind of frosted pieces that are also 4 by 5 1/4 that are going to line the inside. So let's glue the front one on first. A little bit of glue. And we'll pop this on. Just like that. Oh, forgot to turn it over. I think the ink is dried on my fingers. And then on the inside, we're going to put 1 of each of these panels on either side. That's going to give us a nice backdrop for our pop-out piece. Okay, so again, we'll ink or glue these up. And pop these on. So there's 1. And 2, and I like to just, again, be aware of my edges, make sure that they are lined up, and then I'm going to flip this whole thing over and give it a good burnish. Make sure everything is well adhered. Okay. All right, let's work on the front. So I have here a large cherry cobbler label. These are all cut using the branching out dies. I featured them a few weeks ago. And then I have the next size down basic white. Okay, so those are going to layer like that. We're going to do some stamping on the basic white one. So again, I'm going to bring back that pine branch stamp and some shaded spruce ink. I do need to get rid of as much of the purple. I think I need to give this a clean. Give me 1 sec. Forgot to bring my chamois over. We're going to give this a clean because I don't really want purple on this card. Make sure we get all of that. Blackberry Bliss. Blackberry Bliss is such a saturated color. If you don't clean it, it will still kind of show through. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and ink up my pine branch stamp here, and I'm going to stamp kind of in opposite directions. So I'm going to start kind of from the middle of the label. I'm going to stamp once. Okay. Then I'm going to flip the stamp and I'm going to go the other way. Okay. Then I'm going to rotate. I'm going to do one this way. It's almost like we're creating a pinwheel effect. And this way. Okay, so that's essentially our pinwheel. But then I wanted to fill in a little bit more. So I'm going to come in with the stamp stamped off and just kind of fill in the white space because I didn't want it to look too sparse. I want it to look nice and full. I love that the stamp is a little bit arced. You can create wreaths with it, and you can also get this cool little pinwheel effect. Okay, so that is all the stamping in the background. Now we're going to go ahead and glue that onto our cherry cobbler label. So let's go ahead. I should mention the sizes of these just in case you're trying to recreate this. So this one is 2.5 by 3 7/8. Okay, and then the cherry cobbler is the next size up in these dies, which is 2 7/8 by 4 1/4 ish. Okay. Once you have the one of the two, you'll be able to figure out the other size. But I thought it would be helpful if you're trying to recreate this card, just to know your dimensions. All right, so let's pop that on there. Get it centered. I like to use liquid glue. I find it a little bit tricky to line these label dies up because of the cutouts. If I look at those, they look wrong. It looks wrong, but if I look at the edges, it's fine. So we're going to go ahead and glue that onto our card front. Centered as best we can, and hopefully relatively straight. All right, I'm going to set that aside for a moment, and we're going to work on our sort of arrangement that's going to go centered on this piece. And I got all kinds of bits and bobs in here. Some we will use on this, and some we will use on the inside. So I need my shaded spruce, I need my large label, and I need the itty bitty pine cones. All right. Don't need this one. Okay, so I have, this is the medium snowflake from the stamp set, and I'm going to stamp this one in Pretty Peacock ink. So back my Pretty Peacock ink pad, I'm going to do my upside down stamping trick. I've die cut the blank, and these snowflakes are actually quite easy to do this trick with. So I'm going to, I inked my stamp. I'm just going to take and line up that blank just like that, and then take another block and press. Okay, and that gives me my perfectly aligned snowflake. And then we are going to stamp a different snowflake, this one here, in Old Olive, nope, sorry, I lied, Mossy Meadow ink. So we're going to do the same trick. So I'll ink this up. And again, now this is smaller, so it can be a little bit trickier. You just have to take your time. Get that centered. Ooh, that moved. That may be a bit messy. Oh, no, it's okay. There we go. I had my doubts. All right, so the last little bit of stamping we have to do on our arrangement is our pine cones. Let me get this out of the way. So we have, again, 2 little pine cone blanks, and I have my little pine cone image, and I'm just going to take and actually put these onto a cherry cobbler label that I cut for the front, just because I need a little bit of contrast. I don't need to do this one upside down. I find that I usually can get this centered fairly well, as long as I have some contrast. So I'm not looking at white on white. I am terrible at seeing white on white. So I like to put a darker colored cardstock or silicone mat or Stampin' Pierce mat behind it, and then it's really easy to get that lined up. Yes, Lisa, I have resolved my internet issues. I finally got a new router after much argument with Rogers, insisting that, you know, it was my fault that things weren't working. They finally acknowledged that my router was quite old. So there we go. We got a new router. All right, pine sprigs. We are going to use those to create sort of a little bit of a, I don't know, arrangement behind our snowflake here. Now I'm going to cut these in half because I want to be able to use a branch. I want to be able to create like a sort of a pine branch snowflake behind our stamped snowflake. So I'm going to go ahead and put some seal all the way around the back of my snowflake here. And I'm going to tuck one little pine branch in, and I'm going to just kind of be aware of how many sprigs. I have 1, 2, 3, 4 showing. And that is just to help me ensure that it's going to look fairly symmetrical when I get this all glued on. So as I'm sticking these on, I'm just kind of making sure I have about 4 sprigs showing on each one. So we're just going to work our way around. There we go. And one more. There we go. Okay, so you can see how those little sprigs, I'll hold that up a little closer, give the illusion of another snowflake behind it. Okay, all right, let's do some stamping. We're going to stamp our sentiment. So this is another label from the Textured Notes dies. Again, those are one of my go-to dies these days, those and Branching Out. I love them both. And we are going to stamp It's the Most Magical Time of the Year in Cherry Cobbler ink. This just fits across our label here. We do not have that many long, narrow labels. This one is just right. And we're going to go ahead and start arranging. All right, so I'm going to bring back my card front. I'm going to start with a piece of this gorgeous ribbon. So this is the ribbon that is part of the suite. It's 7/8 inches wide, shaded spruce and gold. It's very soft and supple. You saw, I showed you my sample there that had the pretty little bow tied. It's lovely ribbon for packaging. I would not use a large bow like that on a card front because they are quite bulky. But this ribbon just adds a lovely little hint of texture to your projects. So let me go ahead and add some seal across the front of my label here. I've notched the ends of my ribbon, and I'm just going to go ahead and adhere that across the front of my card like that. That's a little crooked. Let's see if we can get that straight. Close enough. Once I get all the other pieces on, you won't notice, right? Right. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and stick our snowflake down. I like to have the pine one kind of pointing up. You could do it the other way, but I like to have that sort of die cut being sort of the most prominent. So I'm just going to add a little bit more liquid glue here. I've already got a fair bit of seal on here, but I'm going to add just a little bit of liquid glue to make sure that that stays put, because it really is the foundation of my arrangement here. So I'm just going to center that on my ribbon. Then we're going to pop up this little sort of pine branch snowflake. I'm going to use just a mini dimensional here. I don't need to worry too much if my mini dimensional shows. I'm putting it in the center, but if it shows out, I'm not going to see it anyway. It does fit pretty well if you get it centered, but if you don't, it's not the end of the world. Okay, so there is that. Now we're going to go ahead and add our sentiment. It's going to run right across the front. This is already popped. So what we're going to do is add a few more mini dimensionals on either side, kind of in line with the arms of that smaller snowflake, because that is going to run right across there like that. Okay, so we'll get rid of our backings here. And I'm going to add just a smidge of liquid glue to the center of this, just so that the center of my banner stays put. And we're going to go ahead and run that across the front, just like that. Okay, then it's just a matter of tucking in our additional pieces. So I have a little pine cone, a little bit of seal on there. We're going to tuck one kind of in behind here like this. And then I have another one that we'll kind of tuck in behind like this. Can you tell I love arranging Christmas greens? I said to my husband, I'm really dying to do my pots outside. I still have mums in them, but they're almost done, and I'm dying to go and get greenery and get them arranged. The problem is, he said, if you do it now, they'll be dead by Christmas, and he's not wrong. So I think I have to wait a couple more weeks. So I have a bunch of berries. Now there are 2 different berry dies in this die set. There is one that cuts, it's a strip that cuts individual berries. And then there's one that cuts groups of 3 berries. So I've got both. And as always, I have used adhesive sheets on all of them because it's just so much easier than trying to fuss with liquid glue with these little bitty pieces. I do not like fussing with liquid glue. I think I may have said that once or twice before, but for me, adhesive sheets are a no-brainer with little tiny bits like this. It just makes it so much easier to navigate them. And we'll just add a couple more here. One more up here, and we'll do one more red one out here, or a single one, and then we'll call it an arrangement. There we go. I will add my bling afterwards, but I want to show you how to do the inside. So we'll set this aside for a minute. I have a 1 by 11 inch strip of shaded spruce cardstock. Okay, so this is scored at 2 3/4 and 5.5. And then I hate extending the arm on my trimmer, so I just flipped it around and scored it 2 3/4 again. I think I put the measurement, if you want the measurement straight across, 2 3/4, 5.5, and 8 1/4. But I'm lazy that way, and so I just flip it around. So what I'm going to do first is fold it in half along that 5.5 inch score line. And then I'm going to fold back and make a valley fold at that 2 3/4 inch mark on both sides. Okay, we're going to give that a good burnish. Same thing with that center one. Make sure that's well. Okay, and you can see why it's called the W fold, right? All right, so what we're going to do now is glue this inside our card. So this is going to get stuck. I need to make sure that my W opens towards the right. Okay, if you think about it, it's like a little mouth. All the pieces are going to pile up towards the right. I'm going to put some glue all over the back side of this. And then I'm going to flip it back over and line this up. It needs to be fairly centered, not perfectly, but fairly. And the end needs to be flush with the outer edge of the card. Okay, so right about there. And I'm just going to pick this up, make sure, yeah, that's pretty much flush. Okay, the other thing is you need it to be fairly straight. Otherwise, your pop out will be a little wonky. Okay, so now with that still squished flat, I'm going to add some more glue. And then I'm just going to close my card. Give it a second, and when you're done, there's our little pop-out piece. Okay, so easy, right? All right, now let's work on our panels. So I have 4 the same size cherry cobbler labels. These ones measure, this is the second smallest and the smallest labels from the branching out dies. Okay, so these are the second smallest. And then I have the smallest label. I'm going to do 2 with the DSP and then 2 in white. Okay, so we'll go ahead and glue up the DSP ones real quick. Get those centered. There's 1 and 2. I'm going to go ahead and glue one of the white ones because it is going to be where I write my greeting. So I don't need any additional real estate taken up there. These are relatively small, my kind of card, not a lot of room to write. I hate writing in cards. Which is I shouldn't admit, which is awful, right? But it's just, yeah, the less space there is to write, the better, as far as I'm concerned. All right, and then we have one more white label. We're going to stamp our sentiments. So I'm going to bring back my Celebrate the Season. I am going to clean it as soon as I figure out where I hid there it is, my chamois. And we are going to ink this. Now, this obviously will not fit across this little label. So we're going to do a little bit of a masking trick. So I'm going to just take a scrap of white cardstock here. I'm going to cover up the season. And we're going to ink Celebrate with Cherry Cobbler ink. So I'm just going to hold that there and ink up Celebrate. Make sure that's well inked. I'll take off my little scrap. And I'm going to stamp Celebrate centered on my white label. Okay. Then we're going to give that a good clean. Get rid of all that ink. And this time I'm going to cover up Celebrate with my scrap. And I am going to ink the season. Oh, my tummy's grumbling. It must be getting near dinner time. And I'm going to center that under Celebrate. Just like that. Easy peasy, right? So when you have a long, stretchy sentiment and you want to squish it into a little space, that is a really good trick for making it work. Okay, so just mask it off and stamp part of the sentiment and then stack them. Okay. All right, let's put this together. So we're going to add our, oh, no, we're going to do a little bit of stamping. I got an itty bitty snowflake, and I'm going to bring back my pretty peacock ink, and I'm just going to do a little bit of stamped off snowflakes here, just a couple of them. Kind of falling down the front of my label here like that. Just to bring a bit of that pretty peacock in from the front of the card. What I love about this DSP is that no matter what greens you have, they will work. Pretty much every green in our color lineup is in this DSP. So even if you don't have them all, you probably have something that will work, which is fantastic. All right, so we're going to go ahead now and glue these inside our card. So I'm going to start and work left to right. Actually, no, I'm going to work right to left, I think. So I'm going to go ahead and put my glue just on my little pop out piece here. Now this piece actually ends up getting glued flat inside the card, but I like to just practice making sure that I only put my glue on this piece so that when it comes time to glue these guys that need to stand out, I don't accidentally put glue where I don't want it. Okay, so there is number one. This one's going to go beside it. So here's where it matters, right? We're going to put our glue just on that piece and add that panel. Now you certainly could glue all of these pieces on before you glue your pop-out piece on, if you were so inclined. It's kind of six of one. Oops, don't move. 6 of one and half dozen the other. I just like to see where it's going to sit inside the card, so that's why I wait until I've got it on. We're going to add our greeting. A little bit of glue here. And again, I'm just paying attention. I want these to line up, like the bottom edges of my labels to line up. And then last one is going to go on right about there. And again, we'll just make sure things are nice and flush and straight. Okay, so we could leave it at that, but you know me, I like lots of layers. So we're going to just add a little embellishment on the inside of each on each of these DSP panels. So I've got another one of those pine sprigs that I've cut in old olive, and then I have the 2 pine cone dies. I've cut them from two-tone pecan pie cardstock. So I have one that is a dark versus light, and then I have one that is a light versus dark. Okay, and the nice thing is you can use the same same cardstock and not have to and still get 2 colors, right? 2 shades. So we'll just go ahead and pop this on. I should have used adhesive sheets. You'll notice that I did not. It's not smart, because you get the glue ooze. I'm going to be a little more careful. I'm going to show you a little trick for lining these up. I'm going to go ahead and add my glue here. Very itty bitty dabs. And then what you can do is take your solid image and flip it over and just lay it on top. So you don't have to pick up that gluey detailed image. And you end up with a little bit less of a sticky mess. Okay, so those are our pine cones, and we're just going to go ahead and arrange these. Now I'm going to take one pine cone, I'm going to add some seal to the back. And which one did I add seal to? This one. I'm going to add my little pine branch, trim off the excess bit. And then I'm going to add my pretty peacock branch. This one's going to kind of sit like this, down in this corner. And add a little bit of liquid glue. And we're just going to adhere that right onto the label like that. And then the other one is going to go in the opposite corner. So I'm going to add that like that. Trim off my excess. A little bit more seal. And again, we'll add our branch. And then this one is going to go in this upper corner. So we'll just add a little bit of glue and pop that on in that upper, over just a smidge so our leaf doesn't poke out. Okay, and then again, I've got some of our little berries. We'll just add some berries to our little arrangement here. There we go. Okay, and then our last touch on the front is some more of those faceted snowflakes. So I've got the silver ones. Maybe we'll add the red ones this time, just for something a little different. Oh yeah, love the red. So we'll go 1 and 2 and 1 more up here. There we go. Done. You like that one? Okay. Thank you, Susan, for being my cheering squad. I appreciate it. All right, so there are our 3 projects. Let me bring them all back. So we've got Fun Fold, we've got Wintry, and we've got Christmas. Now here are some more. Like I said, I couldn't just stop at 3. So this one was one of the first ones I made. I actually used basic beige cardstock. And I like sort of the rustic vibe of this one. And I really went kind of crazy with my pine die cuts there. But I love the pop of the red ribbon on that one. Here's one that doesn't have anything to do with snowflakes. It's just Christmassy and foliagey. So I just used those pine branches as pine branches and made a little arrangement. Here's another one. No Christmas in sight. This time I used that stamped pine branch that we used earlier to create like a little swag or garland. Here's another one showcasing some of the DSP and that pretty bling. Here's one I did with that same sort of frosty pattern that we used on this card, but this one is really all about the die cut pieces. Really, it showcases the different die cuts. You can see how you can get a snowflake look from that. And here's one. This is one that we did at my team event. Barb Peffer, who is a member of the Stamping Symphony, demonstrated this one. So pretty. And then here's another one. Again, using that same sort of frosted pattern. I did a little bit of ink blending on it and before I stamped on it, so to sort of darken it down. But there you go. There's some ideas. You like those? This is a fantastic suite, everybody. If you missed it or you kind of dismissed it as, oh, I don't need more snowflakes, you need to reconsider because it is really, really beautiful. All right, let me come back and I'm just going to quick scroll through comments and see if anybody had any questions because I was kind of on a roll here. Thank you, Lisa, so much. I appreciate it. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Colleen. Okay, Liata, you're going to love it. Once it arrives, you really will. Yes, the dies in this are, I remember when I first saw this, they gave us a sneak peek in one of the leaders groups. And the first thing I said is, oh my goodness, those dies, they're gorgeous. All right. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you for, okay, I'm glad you like them. Let me come back and say a proper goodbye. Now I have to tell you, I know I missed last week. I'm not going to miss next week, but I'm going to be a day late. My husband's 55th birthday is next week, and we actually have tickets to Stratford on Tuesday. So Stratford is a little town about 40 minutes from here, which is world renowned for its Shakespeare Festival. And we're actually going, it's theater community. And we are actually going to see Dirty Rotten Scoundrels performed at Stratford for his birthday and then go for dinner. So I will not be live on Tuesday, but I will be live on Wednesday. I think I might actually showcase some new stuff that was just released today. So stay tuned and I will see you next week on Wednesday for another episode of Tuesday Live at 5. Okay. Thanks everyone. Bye for now.